Welcome to the UST Education recorded webinar series. This session is powered by US Transactions. UST is a boutique payment processing firm providing you with personalized service. We offer agnostic, best-fit technology solutions for associations, nonprofits, and enterprise clients.
Yep, you're good to go.
Perfect. Okay, so hello. We are excited to be here talking with you today about elevating association digital experiences. I'd like to quickly introduce Fionta. We were founded over 22 years ago to serve the needs of associations and nonprofits. In that time, we've worked with over 1,200 organizations. Many of our clients have been with us for years. Our values underpin everything we do, and we believe it's because of them that we've been certified as a great place to work multiple years running. We're also proudly women-owned and a majority women-led. My name's Kaylee Quinn. I'm a senior UX UI consultant at Fionta. I've been with our company for over 9 years and have worked with dozens of associations to improve user experience in support of deeper engagement, member satisfaction and retention, and increased revenue. In my spare time, I enjoy cooking, drawing, painting, thinking about going to yoga, but not always going, and my cat, Billy. And I'll pass it over to my colleague, Jen Christ now, who will be talking about measuring engagement with web analytics.
Thanks, Kaylee. Hi, all. I'm Jennifer Christ. As Kaylee mentioned, I'm the Senior Analytics and SEO Consultant here at Fionta. I've worked with clients both in the non and for-profit space for many years. I'm always seeking to educate them about the importance of digital goals, measuring impact, and being open to really pivoting tactics based on their data-driven information. Outside of work, I enjoy spending time riding my horse. You can find me a lot of the time at the barn, very outdoorsy, like hiking. Also have 2 cats that I love dearly. And if not those places, probably at hot yoga.
I'm glad that you do the things that I aspire to do.
Our cats stay out of the room for this presentation, but no promises.
Okay, so I'm going to take back over. So here's what we'll be covering today. And I saw your chats, great things. I think you're all in for some good learning today. So we're going to go over the importance of optimized digital experiences, 4 methods to enhance member engagement, including web analytics, user experience research, digital accessibility, and heuristic evaluations, practical tips, including tools and methods you can start using today, and case studies of organizations who have done this kind of optimization work. So first of all, what do we mean when we say digital experiences? A digital experience is a user's interaction with a digital touch point, whether it's signing up for an event, purchasing a membership online, using a website, or interacting with a member community, to name a few examples. And why is it important to optimize your digital experiences? We believe that the most important thing to remember when building new digital experiences is that when all is said and done, human beings have to use the things that we build. So in other words, we should be designing digital touchpoints with a member-first mindset so that they are member-centered and make our members' jobs and lives easier. The methods we'll be discussing today to elevate your digital experiences enable us to make informed decisions, improve member adoption of your digital experiences, improve accessibility and inclusion, and are aimed at increasing member satisfaction. In this presentation, as we talk about analytics, user research, accessibility, and heuristic evaluations, we'll be looking at ways to answer these questions on the screen. So do you know if what you built is successful? Are you building something that people want and value? Can people use it, and can they use it easily? And can everyone use it easily? So I'm going to pass off to Jen now. Jen, if I miss a cue to move your slide along, just give me a little note and I'll watch your chat. Thank you. Okay.
So we're going to dive into the first method today, which is web analytics. And if we go to the next slide, we will see.
There we go. There we go. Okay.
So we're going to start with exactly what is web analytics. So web analytics is the process of gathering, synthesizing, and analyzing web data to understand and improve how members are interacting with your web property. And a lot of times when we're talking about web analytics, what goes hand in hand with that is people say, well, we want to use web analytics to make data-driven decisions. And that's wonderful, but there's so many things that go into making a data-driven decision. So today we're going to take a look at the metrics that you can use, the tools you can use, and also how you kind of bring all of those together in order to make a data-driven decision. And then we're going to make one together. So if we go to the next slide here, then we're going to start at why is web analytics important, right? So looking at the pros. First, web analytics is really helpful because it allows you to collect basic data about your website. How many members are visiting your site? How are they getting there? What content are they engaging with the most on your site? Is there seasonality on your site, right? So if you start to see a decrease in member engagement or a decrease in traffic, is that something you need to be concerned about, or is that something that you can expect and you tend to see year over year? It's also very helpful because it improves usability and user experience. So web analytics really helps you understand how your audience is engaging with your website so that you can make decisions to really improve the overall user experience, which Kaylee will talk about later in the presentation. And third, it allows you to really measure the success of your website goals and digital initiatives. So are members taking the actions that you want them to take when they're engaging with your web content? If you make a change to that web property, did it make an impact? Was there a measurable change? And was that successful or not successful? And also, are your marketing campaigns driving engagement? Are they driving conversions? These are all questions that we can kind of answer with web analytics. So what are some cons or risks of not having web analytics? So the first would be underutilizing your website as a tool for connecting with your audience. So a lot of times a website is really an extension of your brand, an extension of your arm. So we want to make sure that when people are viewing your website, they're doing exactly what we want them to do. And web analytics can help that. But if we don't have that, we're a little bit blind to their actions. Also, implementing changes that have a negative impact to website traffic and users without knowing it. So there are many instances where you can make a change. And if you're unaware of the top pages that are driving website traffic, kind of what sources are driving website traffic the best, you may kind of make a change that has a negative impact on this. You won't mean to, but then you'll kind of have to rectify it later rather than being able to get ahead of it. And the third piece is that you can often focus on metrics in isolation and therefore not really have the full picture. Having one tool is really, really useful. But if we think about like a big piece of the pie for web analytics, sometimes only having one tool is really only looking at one piece of the pie, right? When you can kind of get to a place where you can pull all of those tools together, then you can kind of get the holistic strategy and experience. So for our first engagement question, I would love if you could tell us, and feel free to kind of put this in the chat and we'll take a look. What is the primary goal of your website and what actions do you really want users to take on your website and your web property? And we'll just call out a few here. Driving engagement. Engagement seems to be a really popular one from previously, so I'm assuming some of that is carrying over. Yep. Promotion and info. Inform and ask for more information about our organization. That's a really good call out, Dean. Okay, awesome. Well, hopefully we can show you how to do some of those things. Register for events. Yes, event registration is a really big one. So now these are all great. Thank you so much. And Kaylee, if you see any more neat ones come in, feel free to flag them. But now we're going to kind of look at the key metrics that we can use to track some of those examples that you just shared with us. So first, we're going to look at how can we measure traffic and engagement and kind of acquisition from your members. So how are users and members finding your website? So some metrics here that we'd like to look at are views, right? How many total views is your website receiving on a monthly basis, on a weekly basis, on a yearly basis? And again, is that up year over year? Is that down year over year? If you're looking at kind of driving more engagement or perhaps driving new membership, something that can be really helpful is looking at the total users your website is receiving and comparing that to new users, because then you can see, okay, we had 5% new users this month versus 3% last month. That's really great. And we know that we're kind of growing our audience. And then the last piece for traffic and acquisition is really the default channel group. And this is just a fancy way of saying the source of where people are coming to your website from. So that could be, are they coming directly, right? Are they kind of typing in the URL? Are they coming via email? Are they coming via Google search? And if you are kind of coinciding with your marketing teams, if you are leveraging marketing campaigns to, drive registration for an event, to drive new memberships, we can kind of put UTM parameters on marketing campaigns to see how many event registrations did that email, sign up? How many did that paid ad sign up? So it's just a really helpful piece for attribution. And the second metric kind of category here is engagement, which I saw a lot of you mentioned in the chat. So how are users interacting with your website? So a big one, and we'll talk about this a little bit when we get into tools, is something called engagement rate. So Google Analytics 4, which is the updated version now from Universal, actually has an engaged session metric. And what that measures is, did the person in that session actually engage with your content in any way? Did they click on it? Did they download something? So you can really kind of use that to focus in and track member engagement. Another one is bounce rate. So bounce rate is exactly what it sounds like, how many people got to your website and just bounced right on out of there, right? And that could mean a few things. That could mean they didn't find what they were looking for, or they found it really quickly, and maybe we need to do a better job of kind of pulling them deeper in and keeping them engaged through the website. And then the last two are pages per session and average session duration, which is just, again, how many pages they're engaging with, how long are they spending on the website. The third piece that's helpful is overall conversions. So once and this kind of goes hand in hand with engagement, because in order to make sure our members are engaged, we want to make sure that they're converting on the website, right? And converting can mean many things. A lot of times people associate conversions with e-commerce or, purchases. That's not necessarily the case. It can also just mean a button click. It can mean signing up for a newsletter. It can mean downloading a PDF that's really informational and useful to them. So having analytics in place kind of allows us to track all of these things. And then the last piece is just overall underrated metrics that I think are really helpful and wanted to kind of include. So two of those having to deal with how users exit the website. So exit page and exit rate. So is there a specific page that has a really high exit rate? Are people hitting it and they've come through a journey and then there's not really anywhere else to go? Is there a change we can make to that page to kind of keep them more engaged there? And that goes hand in hand with page path, kind of seeing their flow, as well as link clicks. So now that we have all of these metrics, if we move to the next slide, we can kind of talk about a few of our favorite web analytics tools in order to track these metrics. And I will caveat this with, there are so many tools out there. This is kind of the standards, kind of probably the most popular ones that we have seen really great results from. And by no means do you need one from every kind of bold piece here, right? These are just a variety of things that you can kind of blend together. The bread and butter of tools obviously being a web analytics platform. So that typically includes Google Analytics, which goes hand in hand with Google Tag Manager. Those are probably the two most popular, followed by Adobe Analytics and Matomo. And I will caveat here that a recent kind of trend with Google Analytics has been transitioning from the old platform, which is Universal Analytics, to Google Analytics 4. We've been working with a lot of clients on that because although they are both Google Analytics platforms, their metrics aren't necessarily apples to apples. So it's kind of important to know if you were using a platform that has since been updated, it might be a good time to kind of revisit those metrics and just make sure you have all your bases covered. A second type of tool is A/B testing tool. So in this case, for example, say you have a page and you'd like to test 2 different designs of a page or 2 different CTAs, or just to see how you can better engage your members. That's where an A/B testing tool would be very helpful. And some of those include Optimizely, Crazy Egg, and then A/B Tasty. And then the third piece that honestly I would put almost on par with the importance of a web analytics platform are data visualization tools. So as you can see, we're looking at a lot of metrics. We're looking at a variety of different tools, and it can be really difficult to have to navigate to many different places and kind of just stare at data. Using a data visualization tool such as Looker Studio or Tableau can allow you to kind of use data sources to build out, say, a weekly or a monthly report that will just auto-populate with that data. And it can allow you to kind of pull all of those different data sources into one place. And it really is helpful for telling a story. And then getting into our last two here, search engine optimization tools. Not necessarily like under exactly the same umbrella as web analytics, but again, to me, kind of go hand in hand, especially with associations who are really passionate about engaging content and kind of monitoring their content and driving engagement with that content. Can be really helpful to see what keywords people are interacting with, what keywords people are clicking through to kind of get to those pieces of content. And that can all be done through Google Search Console, SEMrush, and Ahrefs. And then lastly, heat mapping just shows, how users are behaving on certain pages. This can be really helpful for home pages or pages that get a lot of traffic, just to see, are people scrolling all the way down to the content we want them to? Are they trying to click on something that isn't actually clickable? And maybe we should make it clickable. It's just one of my favorite things. It's definitely a nice to have. I wouldn't say it's a foundation, but it can reveal some pretty neat insights. And some examples of that are Mouseflow, Hotjar, and Crazy Egg. And then if we go to the next slide, okay, thanks, Kaylee. So now that we've gone through metrics and tools, how do we make informed decisions based on all of these things, right? So this is, I'm glad it warms your heart to see Crazy Egg. I love Crazy Egg. So this is the fun part, right? The fun part is when you have all those metrics in place, you have all the tools in place, and then you get to use that to like create a story and figure out what that story is. I'm probably a huge nerd for getting so excited about this, but this is one of my favorite parts of being a data analyst. So really, if we distill this down to 3 different steps, the first is identifying metrics to focus on, right? Which we've kind of talked about, and visualizing those metrics and that data to kind of see any trends, increases, or decreases. And then really the caveat here is to remember that context is key. We may have to pull together multiple tools for the full picture. So we're going to run you through kind of 2 examples of data analytics in the wild. If we go to the next slide, this is kind of a practice problem that we actually got from a client, and this is on a much more granular level. So this is kind of just day-to-day. We're curious about this. So the question was, why did this piece of content perform so much better than all the other pieces of content? So some context here is this client just creates a lot of content, has a lot of blog posts, and noticed, as you can see by the data, that blog 1 was really outperforming everyone else by a lot, 8,000 sessions compared to 2,000 and less. So subject line and subject, okay. So that's a good hypothesis. So from there, we see, okay, we know that we have all these sessions, right? Where are these sessions coming from, right? Like, are they being driven by an email? Are they being driven by a marketing campaign? Or are they being driven by another channel? So then we kind of break it down in Google Analytics and look at, okay, here are the different channels. We can see kind of 2 things we can glean from this. One, organic is the biggest driver, which organic meaning someone is Googling something and finding it through Google. And the second, we have a really large amount attributed to other. So that means those are just kind of floating in the ether, and we kind of need to work to identify and attribute those properly. So kind of sidelining that and knowing that we need to kind of work on the attribution for other, we can use that organic piece to say, okay, well, what keywords are driving so much traffic to this page, and what have we done to kind of optimize this page, and can we apply that to other pages, right? So that we can kind of increase sessions for all blogs. And some tools we can use to do that are SEMrush and Google Search Console. So again, just here putting together like 3 different tools to kind of get a full picture of the story. And then if we go to the next slide, we zoom out even further, right? So that was like a really specific one article performing really well. But what if we say, as many of you did, okay, we just really want to improve member engagement, right? That is what we want to do. That is what we are really excited about. And that is exactly what we worked with a client on in terms of doing a website redesign that was really focused on improving member engagement. So before we did this, it was really important to us to kind of sit down and establish metrics in terms of, do we have things that we can track before and after to ensure that engagement did indeed rise? And by having those metrics, we were able to see that with the website redesign, there was an 86% increase in time spent on site, 56% increase in views per user, and 40% increase in engaged members, right? So kind of tying this back to that first or second slide of pros and cons, having those metrics allowed us to say, okay, this web design was successful and we did reach our goal. So that kind of is web analytics in a nutshell for our first piece. And now I'm going to pass it to Kaylee to talk about user experience research.
Thanks, Jen. Okay, so while analytics can tell us the what part of what's happening with engagement, like Jen was showing us, user experience research helps us answer more about the why. So for example, analytics may tell us that in the process of joining our organization online, people are dropping off at that last step. Maybe they get all the way, they fill out all their information, and then they get to the payment page and they just disappear. So we know from analytics and tracking that happened, but user research is how we can engage with people and our members and talk to them or observe them to figure out why that's happening. So what is user experience research? User experience research is the study of learning what end users of a system or product need and want, then using those insights to enhance the design process for products, services, or software. User experience research should be used to uncover your members' needs, preferences, and pain points with their current interactions with your digital member experiences, whether that be a website, member portal, forum, event registration process, you name it. And why should we do user research? So to make sure that we make the right digital experience enhancements that both align with our organization's objectives, as well as our members' needs and expectations. The core of UX research really is ensuring that users find value in what you're providing to them. And the only way to know for sure what is valuable to your members is to ask them what that is. You just got to talk to them. So what are some risks of not conducting any user research? Some that we've seen are spending money on the wrong initiatives, building things and blowing budgets on things that your members don't find value in. For example, if your organization is thinking about investing in building a member community or a member forum, something new, it would be really prudent to conduct user research to make sure that users would even actually recognize that as a member benefit. And here I want to discuss 3 types of UX research, UX being user experience, UX research methods that I find really valuable in my work. So the first is surveys and interviews. These are attitudinal methods, and they really aim at understanding what people are saying. So you should use surveys and interviews when you want to establish the right direction or opportunities to spend money and time on. For example, if you did want to launch that new member forum or create a member directory, you could use surveys and interviews to ask your members, 1, if this is a feature they would find valuable, and 2, how can we make sure it meets their needs and expectations once it's built? What are the right features to include in this product to make sure people find it valuable? Surveys are better for when you want higher volume of input. So for example, if you wanted to find out if a specific feature like direct messaging in your forum would be desirable, you would want to make sure and ask a larger group of people in a survey to make sure that the data is trustworthy. And you have enough of a sample to say, 80% of people think this would be valuable. If you only talk to 5 people, that's not a very good number. So surveys are good for larger groups, larger sets of data. And a tip for if you are doing surveys, we see a lot of bad surveys out there. I'm sure you've encountered them in the wild, but to ensure a high response rate and avoid misleading survey results, keep your surveys short and ensure that your questions are really well written and easy to answer. And interviews, on the other side, are better when you want to answer more in-depth questions. So talking with people one-on-one, and you want to answer those more in-depth questions and generate more ideas with your participants, like coming up with that list of features a new digital offering should have to be successful. The next is usability testing. This is my favorite. Unlike attitudinal methods like surveys and interviews, which are based on what users say, usability testing is a behavioral method and is aimed at understanding what users actually do. So specifically, I'm talking about something called Think Aloud usability testing. So in a Think Aloud test, you ask test participants to use the system while continuously thinking out loud. It sounds easy, but sometimes it's hard to get people to keep talking. So when I say that, I mean they're verbalizing their thoughts as they move you through the user interface. So you can use this when you want to improve the usability of a design or a concept you have, and it's best to do usability testing prior to launching a new digital experience so that you can remedy usability issues by testing with a few people before deploying it to many. In Think Aloud usability testing, the facilitator asks the participant to perform tasks using an interface, like a web page, for example. And while the participant completes each of the tasks the facilitator gives them, the researcher observes the participant's behavior and listens for feedback. So for example, you could be testing a new member portal that's in development, and you want to make sure that signing up and logging in is intuitive and easy to do, since this is a critical step to getting your members onboarded. With usability testing, the facilitator might ask your testers to go about setting up their account for the first time while asking them to think aloud. So saying like, let's pretend you need to set up your account. And while you're going through that process, please go ahead and verbalize your thoughts as you do this. So people might say things like, I can't find the sign up button. Oh, well, maybe it's not here. Let me try a different page. And that's a good opportunity for you to say, they can't see the sign up button. I need to move that further up the page. So listening for verbal, when you watch people go through these tasks, it's really good to listen for verbal reactions. Watching for emotional reactions can also show you where people are struggling with an interface or design, and it can help you generate really good ideas for how to address those issues prior to development or deployment. I wanted to share an example too of how my company successfully utilized Think Aloud usability testing. We were working with an academic member organization, and they were launching a new portal where their members would be able to share ideas and collaborate with each other. They chose to use a mostly out-of-the-box solution and keep it mostly as is out of the box with a little bit of custom development layered on top. But as they got closer to deployment, they were worried that certain parts of the user interface weren't intuitive enough, and they wanted to figure out how to address that before launching the portal to their members. So we worked with them to complete usability testing of the portal with 13 participants. You don't need a ton of people for this. And we were able to identify trends and what people were struggling with and come up with simple recommendations to improve that interface. And many of the recommendations we had were really simple text changes and required very little development or design effort. So in doing this, we were able to address usability issues that could have hindered member adoption of the new portal had they not been addressed prior to launch. So I won't go over all of these, and you'll have access to this in the deck after the presentation. But here I linked a few resources I find really, really valuable when I'm getting started with user experience research and choosing the right methods for a given problem to solve. You'll see a lot of the resources I include in this presentation are from an organization called Nielsen Norman Group. They're kind of the godfather of user experience. So they have really, really straightforward and clear information. They have really great articles, and the ones I've linked here are my favorite. They have good matrices of, if you're trying to understand X problem, try using these methods. And there's tons of UX research methods out there. The three I shared are just three very popular, very good ones. And this quote is from them as well. If you can do only one activity, one user experience research activity, and to aim to improve an existing system, do qualitative Think Aloud usability testing. It's really, really valuable. So tell us, we want to hear, has your organization ever conducted user experience research, or have you participated in user research before? And if so, what did you learn? I'll take a minute and look at the chat. Not yet. I like the not yet. I think my first introduction to ever doing testing was going to the mall and doing like those focus group things to get $10 or something when I was a teenager. Let's see here. Looking to do so in 2024. I love that. Not with this group, but I did it the last job. It was such a mixed bag that we just SME'd it. Fair? No, but we should. Great ideas. 2 challenging associations, and this might help. When customizing some AMS software for our association, that is a great time to do it. When you have that AMS software that you've bought, it comes out of the box, it's ready to go, but there are things you could improve, and usability testing is good to do that. Okay, found it challenging. Yeah, it can be hard, Jill, definitely. And that's another reason too. This is the kind of thing your team can work to do. Usability testing is really a good one to, I would say, to get a consultant to help you with. It does take some training, it does take some expertise here, but it is, I think, can be a very low lift opportunity when you do engage a consultant, and a good thing to use. So I'm going to move on to my next method, which is digital accessibility. So it's important to think about how human beings interact with technology and how not all human beings are the same. And this is why digital accessibility is very important. So what is digital accessibility? Digital accessibility, it's a mouthful, refers to the ability of digital content like websites, software applications, and electronic documents to be easily used and understood by people with disabilities. This includes people with visual, auditory, physical, and cognitive disabilities. And you may be surprised to learn that 1 in 4 adults in the United States have disabilities. Specific type of disabilities that make it especially hard to interact with inaccessibly built digital experiences are Mobility disabilities, that's a big mouthful. Mobility disabilities, around 12% of people in the US have those. Cognition disabilities, that's around 13% of adults in the US. Around 6% of US adults are deaf or have serious difficulty hearing, and about 5% of US adults have a vision disability with blindness or serious difficulty seeing even when wearing glasses. So why is digital accessibility so important? One, legal requirements. Many countries have laws and regulations that require digital accessibility for people with disabilities. Ethical considerations. Adhering to digital accessibility standards is an ethical consideration that ensures everyone has equal access to information and services. It's also a way to demonstrate a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and to build trust with your members. And business benefits. Digital accessibility can bring significant business benefits, such as increased member satisfaction, loyalty, and retention. It can also improve your reputation and help you reach a wider audience, including people with disabilities who represent a significant market segment, as we just read. So additionally, when we build things accessibly, everyone benefits, not just people with disabilities. An example of this is something called the curb cut effect, which is the phenomenon of disability-friendly features being used and appreciated by a larger group than the people they were designed for. It's called the curb cut. It's called this because curb cuts, if you think of those dips in the sidewalk that make the sidewalk level with the street, they were initially made for wheelchairs, but are now used by everyone for things like rollerblades, strollers, push carts, rollerblades. We all use curb cuts. So some of the ways we see curb cuts show up in the digital realm are closed captioning and text-to-speech. These features were initially designed to assist people with disabilities, but have turned into features that many people use and value. So when you're working on digital accessibility compliance, the standards you'll most often hear referenced are the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, also known as WCAG, or WCAG, but people say WCAG, it's a weird one. And there are 3 levels of conformance to WCAG standards. Level A is the minimum level. Level AA includes all level A and AA requirements, and many organizations strive to meet level AA. That's kind of the middle ground. And level AAA includes all level A, AA, and AAA requirements and is the most stringent level of compliance. So when beginning to look at your digital experiences and their compliance with accessibility standards, there's really no doubt that it can be daunting, and many of the standards can be hard to understand and even harder to know how to apply. While there are many accessibility tools, it's important to also know that there's no magic solution or single tool out there that can check for compliance and fix your accessibility issues. It really takes people, processes, tools, and education to succeed here. But perfect is the enemy of the good in all ways of life. And it's great to make any progress that you can toward making your digital experiences as accessible as possible. It's also a really good idea to seek help from experienced accessibility consultants when your organization isn't equipped to handle this work in-house. So, what are some things that you can do today for accessibility? The good news is there are lots of things you can do on your own, and you can start now, like literally after you get off this call. Not saying you will, but you could. So I'm going to review 4 of the things, and they are heading structure, color contrast, alt text, and descriptive links. So here are some examples of those. The first example on the left shows heading structure. When you're writing content on a page, you should think of the headings within the document like you would think of an outline. The heading 1 should almost always be the page title. Heading level 2 or H2s should be the top level ideas or topics on the page. And heading level 3 or H3s should be topics nested within the H2s and so on, down to H4s, H5s, H6s. I have not encountered an H7, but I'm sure people have done it. So if I had a page about cats, for example, what else would I write about? The page title might be what I know about cats. That would be my H1. And my H2s could be my favorite cat breeds, how to care for cats, and how to adopt a cat. And within my first H2, my first heading 2, my favorite cat breeds, I could have subtopics or H3s like Maine Coon, Norwegian Forest Cat, and Ragdoll. So that would be an example of how to do heading structure properly. And correct heading structure is important for accessibility because it enables a person using a screen reader to skim the headings and get a sense of the page content. If you're unfamiliar with what screen readers are, they're tools that are used to read web content aloud, usually to people with vision disabilities. A proper heading structure also makes it easier for all page visitors to more easily digest content, and it's good for SEO because search engines and also use headings to understand a page structure and what that content is about. So there's a lot of reasons to do this correctly. In the top middle picture, you'll see with the colors, we're seeing an example of color contrast. Color contrast means the difference in brightness between foreground and background colors. And adequate contrast ensures that people with low vision or color blindness can tell the colors apart and actually see your content. You should look for potential color contrast issues in the following areas. Website templates or CSS. These are places that a developer will probably need to help you to address. Digital and print documents like PDFs, brochures, maps, etc. Text within an image like infographics and event flyers. Text on semi-transparent background or on top of an image. You see this a lot in websites when there's like a really nice header on the top of the homepage and there's a really beautiful image and then there's like some white text over someone's face and you can't really read the text. That's an area where, we see a lot of contrast in compliance. You also want to look at link text compared to its surrounding body text and background color, and color, as well as color changes of interactive elements like links and buttons. So a button color, but then when you hover, what color does that change to? That's another place to keep in mind. So you'll see in this example on this slide, in the picture I have on the top middle, the top row is showing WCAG AA level compliance, and the bottom row is showing AAA compliance. While it's the same 3 color examples, you see like they're the exact same colors across both rows. The middle one is only compliant at a AA level and for the most stringent AAA level, neither of them are compliant. So you can see that third one there is just too light. It's not going to pass WCAG accessibility probably for even that single A level. But the middle one it's good for AA. It's enough contrast for that. But for AAA, there's a higher ratio standard, and it's not going to pass for AAA. And in the middle bottom of the screen is an example of alt text. So fundamentally, the purpose of alt text is to improve accessibility by describing what an image is showing to visitors who do not have the ability to see the image. However, it also helps search engine crawlers and improves SEO by letting search engines know more about the page content. So when you're writing good alt text, it's really important to describe the image so that a person who can't see the image and relies on alt text gets the same information as a sighted person. In this example, I'm going to try to say the word right for this animal. Okay. In this example, the alt text is for the images, a capybara looking relaxed in a hot spa. Yellow yuzu fruits are floating in the water and one is balanced on the top of the capybara's head. So it's describing the subject's expression, a description of what's happening, colors, and interesting features. So if I can't see this image, but I come across it on a screen reader, I'm generally getting the same visual that somebody that is sighted is getting out of this. Pardon me. Okay, so the last image on the page is about writing effective links. So while screen readers can read a full page of text to a user, screen reader users may prefer to listen to a list of links, similar to how they might listen to a list of headers. So they might not be listening to the entire page content, just like how if you're reading it, you're just going to skim it, right? You're not going to read every single word. So if they're using their screen reader, they might be skipping through and say, just read me all the links in the text. And if all the links on your page say things like read more or click here, that's not going to create a useful experience for people who rely on that text to know what they're clicking on. Also, using the full URL path as the link text can be really unpleasant and challenging, and that's a hard way to hear link text be read aloud. So just like headings and alt text, good link text also benefits SEO. And a good example of link text that they show on this picture is at the top, it says, visit WebAIM's link text article for details. So if this link was read aloud to somebody using a screen reader, they would hear WebAIM's link text article versus click here. So you can tell how that would be a nicer thing, an easier thing to understand. And I wanted to look at an example of how you can use an accessibility expert. I think, I mentioned this is a whole expertise. So to know all of this on your own is, unless you dedicate your life to it, you really want to employ the experts when you need to. Those 4 things we took, there are a lot of things you can do on your own, but there is a time when it is important to bring on your experts. So in this example, we worked with an association to design and develop a new website, and it was really, really imperative to them that the site be as accessible as possible. So for this site, we were aiming for AA level accessibility, but AAA wherever possible. And it's, yeah, AAA, I know you see AAA on the screen too, but AAA possible. So like if, you know, color contrast, for example, that's a really low hanging fruit, easy way to get AAA accessibility. The harder places it is to be compliant with AAA accessibility is more of the backend development type of work. And how things are actually coded. But on the front end with colors and fonts, there's really no reason why you can't aim for AAA. So we chose to work with a leading consultant in digital accessibility and we had a member from their team incorporated within our project team to check our compliance throughout both the design and development phases. So though Fiota Consultants already had a deep understanding of accessible design and development, we knew we wanted an extra set of super expert eyes on this project because there's so many components to accessibility compliance. And the result was a website that not only passed accessibility tests with flying colors, but a website that more equally served all of the association's members. And then I want to show you some tools. Of course, I have like a whole boatload of accessibility tools I could share. I have a running document I've been keeping over the years. These are some really good ones though. And so you'll have access to these afterwards, but I encourage you to take a look when you have these slides and kind of get interested in accessibility if you haven't already dove into this topic. And then I want to take a minute to pause, and I'd love to hear what information about digital accessibility are you most excited to take back to your organization after this? I'm going to pull up the chat. Oh, good. I'm glad you like these slides. They're going to be yours after this. Oh, Jen, headers are great for SEO. Yep, beat me to it. Fixing links, easy win. Yes, definitely. Text for the links. Yeah, that's such an easy fix to make. Making sure links are working properly. That's also important. No more click here. Thank you. I would love to see a world with no more click here. I think even if you're not using a screen reader, it can get annoying to see the click here's. Excited may not be the word, but I'm getting new ideas to refresh a bunch of our landing pages. Perfect. Yeah, it is a lot of work. Curb effect. I know, Jill, when I learned about curb effects, it's like, this is so cool. And then you start seeing them everywhere. Okay, I'm going to move forward. Thank you for all your responses. I'm glad that we're kind of excited to use accessibility. I think it's a great topic. So our final method to review is called a heuristic evaluation. That's a crazy term. So let's figure out what that means. So there's a lot of information out there about what heuristics are and different applications for different use cases and industries. But I like, whoops, sorry, let me go back. My thumb hit the trigger. I liked this definition from Investopedia, and it said heuristics are mental shortcuts used to simplify problems and avoid cognitive overload. So making things easier for our members is really what I get out of that. So what is a heuristic evaluation of a digital experience, and why should we do it? And I'm going to read you this. A heuristic evaluation is a method for identifying design problems in a user interface. Evaluators judge the design against a set of guidelines that make systems easy to use. Heuristic evaluations are useful for stretching a limited UX research budget because they help you find likely issues without having to actually test with participants. So a heuristic evaluation can be used to supplement other UX research, though it should not replace it shouldn't replace all research efforts. However, it's something that you and your team can start working on your own right now. I kind of think of it as like quality assurance of your website, just like, are things working correctly? That's if you would distill it down. But there is a method to go about to do it. And you'll see the image on the right is a nice graphic from Interaction Design Foundation, which is a really also great organization if you are interested in learning more about user experience and user interface. But it's showing, applying heuristics is the tip of the iceberg. Underneath that, you still need the great user experience with all your planning and research work at the bottom. That's underneath, but at the top level, we want to make sure that we are doing these heuristic evaluations. So in the previous slide, I mentioned that evaluators judge the design against a set of guidelines, and these are those guidelines according to the Nielsen Norman Group, who is one of the main authorities on user experience design. I'm not going to go through all of these right now, and I have the information linked in a slide following this for your review, but I'll go over the first two examples in the next two slides, just so you can kind of get a sense of what this is like. Okay, so on this screen is an example of a heuristic evaluation workbook, which is also linked in this presentation. So there's a lot of ways you can document issues you find when you are doing an evaluation like this and come up with your recommendations. This workbook is kind of a nice starting point and a format that you could replicate and use. You can use it on a spreadsheet. You can use a tool to track issues, Word documents, whatever you want to do. But this is just as an example of how you could structure it. So the criteria on this page for this specific heuristic is visibility of system status, meaning the design should always keep users informed about what is going on through appropriate feedback within a reasonable amount of time. What does that mean, though? This criteria encourages you to look at your digital experiences through the lens of the following questions. Does the design clearly communicate its state? And is feedback presented quickly after user actions? An example of this might be if you have someone completing a form on your website, let's say an event registration, and they click submit, and then nothing happens. The system has not communicated any feedback about the action they took, and the design is not changed to indicate that anything happened. And how could we remedy that? What are the recommendations we might come up with if we're coming through this with our own team? Some ideas I have, take a person to a confirmation page upon submission or change the button to say submitted. There's a lot of ways you can kind of communicate like your form was successful. And I'm going to pull up another example. So this one is the second one, match between system and the real world. Boy meets world, that's what I just thought of. So the design should speak the user's language, use words, phrases, and concepts familiar to the user rather than internal jargon. It should follow real world conventions, making information appear in a natural and logical order. So for an association in particular, this heuristic might be about avoiding internal phrasing and speaking to members using language that makes sense to them. And I sometimes see that the terminology used on association websites reflects their internal processes and departmental organization rather than speaking to what their members are looking for. So I made up a fake issue on the screen. So let's say if I was doing this heuristic evaluation and I came across and I said, the language in the call to actions isn't clear and it's not common language, I would expect it to say join instead of become one of us. So recommendations would be to pick language that people are more familiar with so they don't have to try so hard to find the join button. Let me move forward. So here's learning and tools for you to take away from this. These are recommendations I really highly recommend looking at. These are really good getting started pieces and makes it really clear. And if you're interested in doing this kind of work, this is truly work that you can engage experts and consultants on, but is definitely something that you can do internally if you can gather a team of people who are willing and have time to do it. So that wraps up our 4 methods for optimizing digital experiences. And of course, there are many, many more ways and methods to do this work. But these are the 4 that Jen and I find especially valuable when we work with our clients. So to summarize what we covered, we want to use analytics and research to make sure we're making informed decisions about what we build. We also want to use analytics to measure and make sure that what we built is and continues to be successful. And if not, we want to find out how to fix that by using user experience research methods. We also need user experience research methods to get ahead of our digital experience projects and make sure they're going to provide value to our members and be readily adopted before we design, develop, and launch them. So to figure out if something we've already designed or developed is doing what we need it to do, we can try to think about usability testing to check how easy it is for people to complete important tasks. And to ensure that everyone is able to use our digital experiences equally and easily, we must pay attention to digital accessibility and heuristics. I think I have a couple minutes for questions, but if not, please take the chat away from me. So if you have any additional questions, I think we have a minute or 2 before we're gonna wrap up. Progress bar, okay, I'm gonna look at the chat, let's see. There is a great accessibility association with resources you can find, IAAP. Oh, I like that, International Association of Accessibility Professionals. Way to tie it back to associations. Thank you, Jackie. Jill says a progress bar is so helpful. I agree. If you're working your way through a survey and it's telling you, I have how many minutes left to finish this survey? Do I want to do this? Okay, I'm going to pass it back. If there's no other questions, feel free to come off mic if you have a question too. Give us like 10 more seconds, and otherwise I'll pass it back over.